Hi, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. Here's a recent description of Hall of Fame pitcher Tom Seaver. He is a man of modest talents, a dray horse, not a thoroughbred. The writer of that quote has been a friend of Seaver's for 40 years. Pat Jordan. In fact, the renowned writer calls Seaver my idol. In his new book, Tom Seaver and Me, you'll learn why Jordan's description is a discerning compliment in disguise. Pat Jordan, sarcastic, smartass, brilliant. Next. Hello, Pat Jordan. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good.
Listen, there are so many wonderful, unconventional observations in your book, like this one, a description of Tom Seaver as a man of modest talents, a dray horse, not a thoroughbred. Explain why that is a good thing.
All right, because Tom wasn't one of these guys that was born with an explosive talent. He told me he was the fourth best pitcher on his high school team. He was a little kid. He said he was 5'7", 150. He went to a junior college. He grew up a little bit. He started to throw a little harder, but Rod Dato at USC wouldn't offer him a scholarship. So then what Tom had done is he perfected all the aspects of pitching that didn't have anything to do with talent, like control, how to be in a game and get the crap knocked out of you in the first inning and still have to go to the mound in the second.
You called it unparalleled concentration.
Because he didn't have any stuff. He had to concentrate on control and placement and all that. I had blistering stuff. I didn't have to think. So as a result, we should tell
the world at this point that you were a pitcher as well, a phenom. You were both. You and Seaver were both signed by the Atlanta Braves.
Right. His contract was voided. The Braves today wish they could have voided my contract, but they couldn't.
But you were a phenom. You had this electric fastball. You could throw it through a wall, as they say, but you couldn't. You couldn't control where it was going.
That's the problem. And so I had the talent very early when I was 9, 10 years old in Little League. Like Tom told me, he once pitched a no-hitter in Little League. I said, big deal. I pitched 4 in a row. You know, he said, oh, you're lying to me. I wasn't lying. I included this story in the book, the picture in the book with the headline, Jordan throws 4th straight no-hitter.
Yeah.
Point being, I was there early, and then I flamed out early. Tom struggled to get there. By the time he was 21, he had perfected the art of pitching, and all of a sudden he was 220 pounds and throwing 98 miles an hour with control. Okay?
And he perfected it through just grinding it out as you
work, discipline. Yeah. First of all, he thought about what he should do as a kid when he was little and he couldn't throw the ball by anybody. And then he was smart enough to be able to do it. I admire him more than any other athlete I've ever met.
You described his pitching motion, since we're talking about his concentration. And of course, you know, you're talking to a New York audience by and large that remembers this guy as the great, you know, Tom Terrific. But I don't think any of our viewers has ever heard him described as a man with little talent, a man who had to work to attain perfection, a man who had a pitching motion that you describe as a track house in Levittown designed by a pedestrian architect. Talk about that.
Right. It wasn't beautiful, but it was correct. The whole point of it is it was functional. And for Tom, it was the perfect motion. Drop and drive. You know, he got low to the ground and used his legs. And it wasn't pretty. I mean, a pretty motion is Juan Marichal, Warren Spahn, you know, guys who had a beautifully classic overhand motion. Tom's was not a classic delivery. It was perfect for him. That's the point.
And you talk about his excellence being the sustained accomplishments across
Right.
20 years. Not a flare here and a flare there of greatness, but sustained,
Yeah, it's like a machine.
consistent.
What Tom did was he grounded out every year, no matter whether he had stuff or sore arm or anything. He wasn't after the big explosive season, 28-2, and then be 14-20 next year. He was consistent. He was all his worst records were like 16-10.
Even though he was a good teammate, he had disdain for those players who lacked the will to fulfill their potential. And you tell a wonderful story about Ed, watching Ed Kranepool hit baseball.
I had spring training. Yeah, I mean, Easy Ed. That's a killer right there. I mean, the fact that he was Easy Ed Kranepool, had a nice, easy swing. He had a soft body. He was a big guy, no muscle. Always hit fly balls at dead center. And Tom would watch him in batting practice, and he'd scream, "Can we swear on this program?" Tom would say, "He can." He said, 10 more feet, and he would have hit 15 more home runs last year. He said, "I know I would have found where to get that extra strength to hit those home runs." The Kranepool never did.
Tom's quote that you have is, he says, "If you don't think baseball is a big deal, don't do it. But if you do it right."
Hey, listen, who are his best buddies? Grody and Harrelson. Neither guy had great talent, but they got the maximum out of what they did. This shows you that Tom was not a superstar early on. He was a grinder. He became a superstar by grinding it out, by working harder than everybody else. And that's what I was trying to say there. I'm not saying he didn't have talent when he was 25 years old and he was throwing a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. By then, he had the talent. But to get there, he had to grind his way there.
When you first met Seaver in 1971, he was already Tom Terrific. What was it that intrigued you about him?
Well, first of all, I saw. First of all, we both had the same kind of personality. Egomaniac, always got to win, can't lose at anything.
Yeah.
But secondly, I saw how he had perfected himself in a way that I didn't. And I always, every time I did this, was with Tom, I was always trying to find out, what did he know that I didn't know? That if I knew it when I was 18, 16, 15 years old, I would have been a big leaguer. And so it was always a lesson whenever I was with Tom. I'd see him do something. I said, "Oh, that's one of the things. That's one of the things." Like my uncle, who was my Little League coach, I was kidding around one day in Little League and I had my shoes unlaced. And he, sloppy. My uncle said, "Any guy who has his shoes unlaced is the kind of guy that when he gets 2 men on base is looking for the manager to take him out." You know what I mean? Those kind of lessons.
Yeah.
Well, those are the kind of lessons I got whenever I was with Tom. And something would come up. I said, "That's why I didn't make it," or "That's one of the reasons why Tom did this."
Well,
I love being with you.
You at the time you were writing for Sports Illustrated, and you told your editor you wanted to do a piece about Tom, and he said, "Why? He's boring." And you said, "Not to me," which was insightful. And so you meet him, and my God, the first thing you guys do is play one-on-one basketball, bruising 3 or 4 hours at a Y in Connecticut at a YMCA. And I mean, killing each other for 3 or 4 hours, no blood, no foul kind of game.
And even when there was blood, there was no foul.
Right. It was that kind of game. But what was that about? Why?
We're two maniacs. We both had to prove we're the best. I was proven to Tom that just because I'm a writer didn't mean I wasn't an athlete. And he was proving to me that just because he was clumsy and wasn't really talented in basketball doesn't mean he couldn't beat me. So actually it was a metaphor for our baseball career. I had the lovely jump shot from 30 feet away, and all Tom did was push me towards the basket, beat me up, and then get close and go in with muscle to lay in a layup over me. You follow?
Truck
Which
horse.
is the same way. Same way he developed his pitching. We saw that we had the same mindset, And it carried over to our interviews and the 40 years that we knew each other. It was never a question of me being with a big deal guy that I was at his feet. Oh, tell me what it's like to be Tom Seaver. I thought he should ask me questions, because we're both egocentric, and that's why we got along. He told me, the first thing he ever told me, he says, Jordan, you never let anybody win a game in your life. He said, I don't even know you, and I know that. Because I told him I let him win the basketball game.
When you asked him, why do you pitch?
Yeah.
What was his answer?
He wanted to be the greatest. He wanted to be the greatest who ever lived. And then he got embarrassed when he said it. Then I said to him, you're a bigger egomaniac than I am. And he said, what could I say? But he never would say that to anybody in the press. You know what I mean? Tom wanted to lead the game as the greatest pitcher who ever lived. And he was not far off. Hank Aaron said the toughest pitcher I ever faced was Tom Seaver.
Aaron was his idol.
I know. I played ball with Aaron. The only question he ever asked me, he says, did you play ball with Hank? I said, yeah, spring training. He said, what was he like? He said, did you face him? I said, yeah, I pitched to him inter-squad game. He said, what'd you do? I said, what I always did. I walked him on 4 pitches, not on purpose, but I was wild.
I'm interested in this internal conversation. Like you're saying, I thought Tom should ask me questions, but you describe him as self-absorbed. He never did that.
He would never ask me, why do you write, Pat? And I said, and I'd tell, if we did, I would have told him because I was a real prick when I was a young kid. I wanted to learn how to be a better guy, so I wrote about myself in a book. I said, and I learned what was wrong with me, and that was my therapy. But he never asked that. First of all, it wasn't any of interest to him. Like, I had an interest towards his pitching, but he had no interest towards anything that I did, like writing or anything like that.
I should point out to the audience, in case they don't know, you did write a marvelous book about your failed minor league career called A False Spring. And if you folks care about good writing and a great story, that's a book you should get. But right now we're talking about Tom Seaver and Me, written by this man here, Pat Jordan, a 40-year friendship. We're talking about how, when you say he was never interested, he didn't ask, but you also say in the book, Tom has always been interested in what I think. He knows that sooner or later I'll tell him.
He just knew that I was the kind of spontaneous guy that was going to tell him anyway. So he said, you just sit back and just sort of smile like, oh, I know what he's going to say now. And then I would fall right into it and say.
The end of that quote is, he knows me that well, the SOB.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, though, Pat, it seems to me like a huge rationalization. At some, you say he's self-absorbed, he's not interested, but then you also think, hey, he is interested, but he waits for me to tell him what I want to tell him.
At first, I thought that Tom might, that he didn't get me, but then I realized he got me. He just didn't let me know, and that's why we were Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He knew what I was like. He said, you're the kind of guy that gets up every morning, has got to find out who he is, what's the meaning of life. He said, life's not that complicated for him. But so he knew me a lot better than he let on. Later,
when you guys are talking now, it's been many years, and excuse me, I think you're both in your 70s at this point, and Tom is being somewhat reflective and talking about, he's saying to you, I used to get satisfaction from a great game pitch.
Yeah.
Or then, after that, a couple of innings. But now, as I think about it, 1 pitch or 2 pitches. Talk about that.
He said, now I realize that in a game, there was 1 or 2 pitches that determine the game. He didn't believe Tom Seaver was never going to give up 14 hits a game and 8 runs, He knew that in his game, there was going to be a moment, runners on second, third, 2 outs. He's winning 2-1. He gives up a double. He loses 3-2.
Well,
That was the moment.
you have a great story that illustrates it in the book. His pitch, he's pitching to Willie McCovey.
Oh,
Great Willie McCovey, bases loaded, ninth inning, bases loaded, 2 outs, 3-2 count. And what does he do? Describe what he does.
First thing he does is keep throwing over to first base. Now, what McCovey gets confused. The bases are loaded. Nobody can run anywhere. So why is Tom holding some runner who's not going anywhere on first base?
He's playing with McCovey's mind, playing with his head.
Right. He said he was throwing him birdseed. Let him wonder why Tom is trying to throw over to first base. Then he said to me, and everybody knew in the ballpark, Tom Seaver's rules of pitching, which is you get in a tough situation and you don't get beat with anything but your best pitch, i.e. 98-mile-an-hour fastball. So everybody in the ballpark knew he was throwing a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. So he goes into his motion, he throws a changeup, straight changeup that comes in, sinks down. McCovey's like one hand off the bat. They meet 20 years later. McCovey says, why did you throw me a changeup in that situation? Everybody knows it was going to be a fastball. And Tom says, even Tom Seaver has to believe the mystery, because he was so mechanical and methodical. He even had his 10 rules of pitching. You got to throw the first pitch of a game, got to be a strike. The first batter of a game has to be an out. The first inning has to be up, 1, 2, 3. All these methodical rules. Then he gets in a really clutch situation, throws them well out the window, and throws a straight changeup.
But what he says about that moment to you just made my hair stand on end. He says, everything done in life is for this moment. No doubt in my mind that at this moment you can achieve perfection.
That's, I mean, the Ozzie Guillen story. Ozzie Guillen was the shortstop in his last year at Chicago.
Yeah.
Ozzie, a funny guy. And Tom's in trouble. So Ozzie comes to the mound. He says, Tom, don't worry. He said, haven't hit the ball to me, man. He said, hit it to me. I'll make a double play. So Tom says, where do you want me to have him hit it? Your left or your right? You look at. He said, you're kidding me, right, man? You could do that? He said, sure, I can do it. I said, man, you crazy. He said, that's another story.
And here's a guy on the mound, as you say, who is known for this, but he goes for that and later calls it mystery. Even Tom Seaver can embrace mystery. Right. I mean, how many pitchers think like that on the mound?
No kidding. That's what I told you. That's how he became Tom Seaver. He thought like that when he was a young kid, because he didn't have the 98-mile-an-hour fastball, and he had to think his way to any success he had, like in Little League and high school, but he wasn't that physically talented. So now when his fastball becomes 98, he's also got a mind of a guy who's a junk ball pitcher, who's been thinking all his life about how to set up batters and all that. And he's got the 98-mile-an-hour fastball to do it. Which makes him.
You have another great story about him thinking with when he was with the Mets, and one time he was having trouble, and the pitching coach Rube Walker comes out to him, and he's kind of squatting on the mound. Talk.
Yeah, he sat down there, and he's like the Indian at a powwow. You're squatting with your hands on your thigh, you're looking down the dirt. And Rube comes out and he says, "Tom, are you hurt? What's the matter?" He says, "No, I'm not hurt. I'm thinking. Get the hell off the mound." He said, "This is my mound." He said, "I was thinking what the next pitch to throw." I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. I mean, he as talented as his fastball was, his thinking was his greatest ability.
I imagine the audience has gotten the point at this point, but this is not a baseball book in the sense of, you talk to them about games and why did you throw that pitch? Why did you throw this pitch? That's not what you were interested in.
No, this was the two guys. What's that? Friend of mine, John Ford Noonan, wrote a play called "A Couple of White Chicks Sitting Around Talking."
Yeah.
And this is a couple of jocks sitting around talking, and they weren't. I never talked the games. Somebody asked me to do a Seaver book. I told them this was the kind of book I wanted to do. They said, "Oh no, we want his greatest hits and his shutouts and his blah blah blah." I said, "I'm not interested in that."
When was the last time, Pat, you saw Tom or talked to him?
The last time I saw him was in 2013 when I was in Calistoga with him. I called him shortly afterwards when I came home to talk to him and tell him how we had so much fun and all that. And it's just like always, he grumbled at me. You woke me up, and I thought I did, but I didn't, because he was up with his grapes. And anyway, so I didn't talk to him about him for a year or two, and then I called him for some reason. And I got him on the phone. It was about 2015, 16. And we clicked off. I said, "Tom, it's me." "Yeah, what?" I said, "Yeah, I just want to see how you're, and then click. And I thought that he dropped the call. So I called back, no answer. Then I figured, I got him in a grouchy day. He could be a grouchy guy. So I left it alone. And then during the wildfires, because at 17,
Yeah.
I called him up again, no answer. I emailed him, no answer, and then I sent him a letter asking if he was all right, and never heard from him again. And that I didn't understand why until Nancy announced that he had dementia.
She made that announcement about 14 months ago, that he had dementia and, retiring from public life. When you last were able to talk to him, he was already showing signs of memory loss, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it was old guy short-term memory loss. What'd you have for breakfast this morning? I don't know what I had for breakfast this morning.
Right.
That kind of thing. But like he said to me before he left, he said, "I can still see every pitch at his age that he threw." He was sharp as a tack in 2013. He was the same Seaver I knew, except he was 70 years old.
Yeah.
But it was the same. We laughed. We told jokes. I mean, driving down his mountain, very dark. I said, what is the Robert Frost quote? I said, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep." And he says, "Yeah, we have miles to go before we sleep." I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, I wouldn't know that he even knew Robert Frost,
Yeah.
So how bad was his mind at that point? Not at all. I never thought anything was wrong.
Given a friendship as rich as yours over these many years, it must be sad to, know that he's unreachable in effect. And I don't mean literally, but also figuratively unreachable.
Yeah, I don't want to see him like that. I want to remember him like I did the last day. And I miss him because he's one of the few people I could talk to about baseball enthusiastically. I mean, I don't know anybody I could talk to about baseball. I still like to talk about pitching. And with Tom, I can talk about Verlander, and because I did stories on Verlander, or I could talk about anything. We could go back and forth about it. I mean, I described my pitching motion to him, and in the final scene of the book, he said, "Yeah, show me what your pitching motion was." So I said, "Tom, I'm 73 years old." I said, I can't stand on one leg anymore. When you stand on
sure.
leg and you lift your left leg up in the air, I go wobble. He said, "I'll hold you." So he got behind me and holding my waist. So I got my leg up. He said, "Higher." I got it up higher. He still holds it. He said, "All right." And then I threw the ball, the imaginary ball, went forward, and he held me so I wouldn't fall down. And after I got through, we were talking about my motion for a change. And he said, "No wonder you had so much problem." He said, "Your motion was too big, too many parts." He said, "I would have cut it down a little bit." He said, "If you would have let me." I said, "You're Tom Seaver. I would have let him do anything you wanted if you said it."
Couple of guys talking baseball for a long, long time. That's
40 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about a quote I read of yours where you said, "The one reason I wrote was I didn't like who I was, and I wanted to find out why and be better." Did you find out? Are you better?
Still, yeah, incrementally. I always thought there was like a key, you get to that point. Oh, you're 70 years old now. You're not going to be an asshole anymore. Not true. 75. No, I'm going to be 80 soon. Maybe then I'll be growing up.
Maybe then.
But it's incremental. A friend of mine, an Irish kid, he was gay, Catholic, and Irish. And I talk about 3 strikes. 3 strikes are out. And he called me one night. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm staring at my sins on the ceiling. What do you think I'm doing?" So he said, "Oh, Patty, don't worry about it, me boy." He said, "It's not how you start the race, it's how you end it."
Yeah.
Which was a great, you started as an idiot, and you hopefully will be a functioning, decent human being at the end of the race.
Well, I hope the race has a lot more miles to go for you, but I am so delighted that you spent this time with me. This book is just a marvel. Tom Seaver and me, Pat Jordan. It's a delight.
Thank you, Tony. It was fun.